Welcome. You've splash landed into this Prosecco-laden podcast, straight into the woo-woo pool with the crew of Ohm-g. We're just a simple group of tragically imperfect and highly empathic BFFs, exploring a wide range of atypical topics with humor, grace, and curiosity. This is Ohm-g. Welcome. Today's topic is cutting cords. What is it? Well, it's the spiritual removal of toxic people and negative connections from your life. We actually have a personal example from someone right here in the Woo crew. You're here with the crew of
Ohm-g, the podcast. Welcome back, everybody. This is Chandra.
This is Camille.
This is Brenda Sue.
And this is Lynn, and welcome back. Today is the last full moon of the year. It is the full moon in Gemini.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Yes, it is.
Full cold moon.
Yes, the full cold moon. And it is also about releasing, and that is going to be our topic today. After much shadow work that we've all been doing recently, but Chandra seems to be dug down into pretty deep, Chandra graciously agreed to be our model for healing.
Thank you for not saying guinea pig. Appreciate that.
Test subject.
Test subject.
Exactly.
Subject. Yes. So, Chandra, take it away,
Well,
I guess.
girl,
Where to start?
where to start?
Literally take it away.
Well,
Snip, snip.
I mean, we've all been pretty open about the shadow work that we've been doing. Shout out to Joanna the Healer and her Higher Consciousness Academy that we've all been working through, which is not for the faint of heart, but is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And maybe about a month ago, I was doing some shadow work on my relationship with my mother and the mother wound, which we all carry some version of. And she made a comment to me that was A, hurtful, but B, not something that I wanted to receive into my life. But unbeknownst to me, in some way, fashion, or form, within the next 2 weeks, it manifested into my life exactly what she wanted. And I started looking back, and just as Joanna teaches us, I was like, that's curious. I wonder what that means. And started, looking back through my life, and I could come up with several examples of where that had happened, where things that she wanted that were not necessarily anything that I wanted and were not for my highest interest at all, actually manifested into my life. And I started wondering, is there like an entity? Has she created this like energetic entity that's now attached to me that is creating all these things that are her preferences, not mine, into my life? And of course, my first inclination was, woo crew, what the heck? Help me figure this out. And had an extensive conversation with Lynn about it. No, I mean, as well as many of our listeners know, that's kind of like what our friend Melissa Sparrow is that's like her bread and butter, what she does. So I messaged her and asked her as well. And the consensus that we all came to was that there are timelines and cords that I still have attached that keep, even though I'm trying to live in a certain vibration and in a certain timeline, they keep pulling me back into a lower vibrational timeline because of her preferences. And those cords that she has attached just keep like bungeeing me back into this place where I don't want to be. And so Lynn, in all of her wonderfulness and love, agreed to do a session with me and cut those cords and collapse those timelines. And that's what we worked on today.
Yeah. Lynn and I were having a conversation before everybody else got here today, and we were talking about like past lives and the concept of what if everything's happening at the same time? And if Lynn has been doing this one thing over and over again, and in different timelines, she's choosing different choices, and then she has different experiences from that. And so like you and your mother, I wonder how many different timelines that I see many. As I'm talking about, it's like, as I'm looking at it, it's like collapse, 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 collapse.
Numerous.
So it's like all of these different timelines. Nothing is either in the past or the future. It's all happening at one time.
And that's how we can heal ancestral stuff and heal the future, is because when we do it now, it happens everywhere
For
at the
all
same time.
timelines.
Yeah.
Whether they're happening ahead of us, behind us, or are they happening at the same time? Like time is such a concept that we have that doesn't, I don't know that it exists in the way that we perceive it. Our
Right.
humanness needs to perceive it in a certain way because we go through.
Well, to make the limitation make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to proceed in an orderly fashion to some degree.
Right.
And that's why it exists, I
To
believe.
exist.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
So we can get to work on time.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
I don't like that.
Me either.
So let's talk about Chandra's session that we did with her. We actually recorded it on video, and she may choose or not choose to put some of those snippets out on YouTube.
Well, the intention is that as long as the audio is good, that we'll put that on YouTube as kind of like a bonus session for this episode. Because, I mean, I came into this, y'all, with the vulnerability on display. Like, I'm not going to gatekeep. It is what it is. There's so many of us that need this kind of thing that there's no reason to not share it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is huge vulnerability on your part to like, let it be watched.
Yeah.
This is me in real time. This is happening right now.
Well, and some people may have preconceived notions about like what a cord cutting is, but if they could see somebody else go through it and realize that it's, oh, that's all it is, that's not at all what I expected, then maybe they won't be, if it's something that they need or would benefit them, then maybe they won't have that preconceived fear or uncertainty about it.
Right. So, Lynn, from what you can recall, because I know when you go into trance, sometimes you don't remember everything, but what was it like on your end of like doing the cord cutting? What was it you first felt? Because I was at Chandra's feet and I was picking up things too, but I felt like I was there as support staff. I was just the support staff, and
Brenda was keeping me grounded.
Camille and our friend Liz were support staff as well.
We were dog wrangling and sending love.
Yeah.
Well, good question.
Do you remember?
Because now that I'm starting to think about it, I'm like,
Was I there?
you know, I remember that I started crying a couple of times just because I could feel the heaviness of the emotion that she was holding on to, and I could feel the cord. I could also feel something was wrapped around her foot.
Yes.
Like a, what was it?
Like a vine.
It was
almost like a vine.
Mm-hmm. It was
But-
like a vine.
But what you tapped into was her 12-year-old self.
Yeah, the first thing I remember is you
I
saying
don't remember that.
your 12-year-old self is here. Like, what happened then?
Root chakra came
Yeah.
up.
And I was like, well, that's when my grandfather became ill. And
He was your stability. He was like some sort of security.
he was, the dynamic between my mother and my grandmother was unhealthy, to say the least. And so he was, the four of us living in the house, he was the buffer because it would only go so far. I mean, and I'm not going to get all patriarchal or whatever, but this was in the 80s. So he was the man of the house.
Yeah, the masculine energy.
The masculine energy. And he was the buffer. Like things would only go but so far with Papa in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And once Papa was gone, free for all.
Right. So your stability and safety were threatened when he wasn't around. So if he got sick when you were 12, that's
And died when I was 13.
then that makes sense why the little 12-year-old Chandra would have came in, because you were feeling like your safety, and that was your safety and stability.
Well, that was when like the dynamic of all those relationships just completely changed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like I'm like, I don't know what y'all want me to talk about because I can't remember anything. But you give me prompts, maybe I can remember.
How to proceed in a ceremony like this? What's the outline?
There is no outline, honey.
There is no there isn't. Like, okay, so Melissa Sparrow, shout out Melissa for helping me with everything
Just like
you've taught.
every other episode, shout out Melissa.
I'm
Love
It's either Melissa or Joanna.
It is.
So.
Yeah.
Those Canadians, we love them.
Yeah. Yes. So, I took training under Melissa to do shamanic and quantum healing. So that's a lot of what I was practicing today. And I just always like to start when I do healing ceremonies, I like to start in the root just to make sure that everybody's good and grounded before I start bringing people in and like letting her child self come forward. I like to just have a good grounded. And then it just depends on, I don't really have a concept of I don't even have a concept of a plan.
You go where spirit leads you, which is.
I just do whatever that calls me in the moment.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no plan. How about you, Brenda?
Well, I was just down there trying to hold space and trying to pull energy down from your root chakra down through your legs.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like everything was getting stuck. And I didn't really feel anything until at one point after we had started clearing out some of that vine-like energy from your left leg, which is your feminine side. Everything's on the feminine side.
Every pain I've ever had in my life has been on my left side.
Yeah.
Physically.
And the way that I was seeing it come down through your legs was like in this really beautiful purple color.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I was seeing that color because I wouldn't associate that.
No, I do, and we'll get to it.
Okay. So the purple energy was like flowing after we started pulling some of that stuff off and clearing out some of that vine-like energy that was like tethering you. It felt like it was a tether.
It was a cord
Mm-hmm.
of sorts because I thought it looked like a string. But then when I got really deep into it, it started looking like a big old strip of duct tape that was stuck like so far down into her body.
Well, but you cut a cord, but then the duct tape string was after that.
Oh, because see, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I'm
You
just
cut it-
like talking up the side of my neck.
I know, well,
She
I
cut
know
the
because
cord.
you were in trance. That's totally understandable. You cut the cord from my sacral,
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
and it was like a bungee cord because it kept trying to snap back.
Mm.
And then the duct
And then
tape was
after-
down your body, but then
Right. And that only like showed itself after. But before you go there, what I do want to say is a friend of mine that I met through my spiritual mentor, I was talking to her about a month ago, like it was right after Thanksgiving. And I was telling her about like wondering if it was an entity, what she thought about it, because she's also an energy healer, but she does more of like energy alignment healing, like quantum chakra balancing. And I was just asking her, like, have you ever heard of this? What would be your take on it? And she tuned into it. And she's the one that says, I see it like a vine or like really prickly, dark black fingers wrapped around your left ankle.
Mm.
Tendrils is the word I kept getting when they were working on you.
Mm.
So she says, I can't say that it's a quote unquote entity or anything like that. But she says the way the scenario presents itself to me is I see like prickly things attached and like you have to drag it everywhere you go.
It's interesting as mediums or psychics or energy workers, how we all perceive the same thing in a little bit different manner.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because it's filtering through our human experience.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all the same thing. It's just like there's a
We
little
just
bit of a
interpret
different,
it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that really interesting because I think the human part of your brain wants to be able to say, oh, this person sees exactly the same thing I do. So that must be exactly what it is. But it can be the same thing and look like different things to different people.
Yeah.
It
I
comes
just find
in
that
through the
interesting.
symbols that you know how to interpret.
I've always seen it as a barnacle or a parasite that is there for so long that you just learn how to work around it and integrate it into your life. And maybe, I don't know, probably Chandra will be able to answer to this in the coming days, but maybe we even feel a little lost for a while after it's removed.
I can definitely see that. But, well, because it's just like anything else. If you're used to, well, it's kind of like losing weight. You know, when you're used to carrying around a certain size or whatever, you hit that one point where all of a sudden it doesn't feel like your body.
Right.
Where it's not necessarily that you can say, oh, I quote unquote feel lighter. It just feels so different that it feels alien.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're freezing and you don't fit anywhere and you misjudge the size of things. And
Right.
It's a very lost feeling.
Right. Because you've gotten so used to everything being quote unquote a certain way.
Yes.
Yeah. I can totally.
And that padding of protection. And I imagine that these cords or barnacles feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very astute analogy, I think.
Yeah, I would think there would be some sort of loss feeling, even though it's a good loss.
Readjustment period.
Well, I mean, just because you've had that sack on your shoulder that you've been, that you've been lugging around for years and years and years, and now all of a sudden, that weight, for lack of a better word, isn't there, and you're like, it's kind of like you don't know what to do with your hands, you don't know what to do with your arm because it's like it's not used to do. It's used to doing a certain function, and now there's no function to do.
Interesting. It was. I mean, I don't remember a whole lot of it, but.
So then what happened was...
Yeah, somebody's got to tell me because I don't remember.
Yeah, so then she pulled off the tape. She said it was like duct tape all the way down your left side.
Well, and ever since I was 25, which this realization came to me while we were downstairs. I was like, why did it start in my shoulder? Like, what happened? When did that pain start? Because when you started pulling the thin black string after you cut the cord.
Like deveining a shrimp, she said.
She said that's what it looked like.
Yeah, I think it's what Brenda said. Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of.
At first, when you started pulling it through my foot, it felt like it was attached at my shoulder, at my left shoulder. And I've had trouble, pain, tightness in my left shoulder muscle since I was 25. Girl, 25 was when I married my first husband. My sweet mama refused to sign the marriage license because she didn't like the man.
Control.
And it was like several months into that marriage when all of the shoulder stuff started happening. And I always thought it was trauma from the marriage, but now.
Mother wound.
Dang. And then the more you pulled, the pain came up into my jaw. And then the more you pulled, it came up into my eye socket. So it was, and I have those radiating headaches that come from my shoulder tension all the way up over the top of my head. So it's like the more you pulled, it was like it kept finding new points of attachment higher up in my head. And then finally, I had a pain in my left kind of like abdomen side, probably like not in my solar plexus, but like under my rib cage, directly aligned with my solar plexus. It was like a sharp pain. And then that's when you were like finally had it all out.
Yeah, we opened a little portal to take all that down into, to transmute it back to source because it was kind of dark.
Oh, and I do remember after you cut the cord from the solar plexus, you called in Ra to fill the solar plexus with sunlight.
Yeah. I do like to work with Ra.
I love Ra.
Yeah. The energy of the sun. Oh, the energy of the sun. Brenda just gave me a pack of tarot cards that
like
had
a mini reading.
Like a mini reading, and one of mine was the sun.
So maybe you were working with Ra on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think I do work with him on a regular basis.
Well, he's come into our spirit circles many, many, many times.
And I do like the sun.
Well, and we felt the Hathors come in at the very end too.
That's
so
right.
Yeah.
That's all connected.
I had this conversation with Lynn, I think it was last night, was texting with you because I did a reading for somebody yesterday and I started channeling. And I was like, I believe it to be like these white beings that we've been becoming aware of during Circle and in our group. And then I had the thought, what if they're the Hathors? What if the white beings are the Hathors? Because we've been working with them in Joanna's group. So what if that's who's coming through? Because the messages are all very similar to me, of being about stepping into your power and about consciousness itself. And it's been a little bit like higher knowing than I know.
Right.
Or have ever been exposed to. So I don't know. I just had that thought last night whenever I was sitting on the sofa playing my game, ridiculously like doom scrolling, but on my game.
And just for context, for people that might not know, the Hathors, this is a spiritual sect of ancient Egyptians is how I understand it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Any more info, you can Google it, but just wanted to throw that in there.
It's like a divine mother's I believe mother's milk. Is that what it is?
You're
Nurturers.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it's something about because I have the card, the Starseed Oracle, and I pulled the Hathors
Of course you did.
right after class one night
course
with Joanna, and she was talking about the Hathors. Y'all remember? Like I put it in the group chat. I was like, "Oh, look at the card I just pulled! Ha ha ha!" So it is like the mother's milk. It's like nurturing energy.
And so that was perfect to come in while we were doing mother wound cord cutting and healing.
Yeah, and you could feel it, like the energy in the room, it shifted.
It did.
And all of a sudden I felt like peace, like wash over me. And I thought, okay, the Hathors are here.
Yeah.
Like this is such a peaceful feeling. And I think they were filling up the spots of you where I took stuff out.
Right. I do too. Because even before you said that, the thought occurred to me and I started visualizing like rubber plugs. And it was so funny. It's funny to me now that it was like, I visualized them in like a certain frequency of like, you know how like you put the sign on your treehouse, so-and-so cannot enter here.
No girls allowed.
No girls allowed. Exactly. It was like cutting off her access. It was like I was visualizing these plugs that were specifically made to cut off her access to those energy points of me. When you created the container, you called it a portal, but I was visualizing it as a container that you were putting all of the gunk into. I saw my grandmother and grandfather, and they told me they were there to take it, that they were going to take it.
Divine protection, baby.
And it doesn't have to move forward with you or with anybody else that's around you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I found it very soothing that they were healed enough to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I felt them.
Your grandfather's over here now. He's standing back behind you over there.
Yeah, I can't bring that back. I remember them coming in and thinking, oh, they're here just to help alleviate. I think that's the word I was hearing, alleviate pressure. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Totally.
There was one point, Lynn, when we were seeing what was going on around her ankle, and you were looking at me, and
I know what you're going to say.
This is going to sound weird. It wasn't like it was Lynn. It was like I was looking at somebody else.
Oh, her voice sounded different throughout. I will add that.
Point in time where I wanted to open my eyes and look at you because I know you weren't going to look like yourself.
Yep. And I was like,
and I was afraid to.
Like,
I'm not afraid, but I was like, okay, if I do that, it's really going to bring me out of this because I know she's not going to look like herself. And so but I don't want to come out of this.
You were whoever it was that you were channeling during that time. It was different than Lynn. It was pretty wild.
Yeah,
She don't know, y'all.
It's funny. Like I was like, oh, I'll be able to recollect that because I won't be in like a total trance, but I was, and I don't even know what happened.
Yeah.
And I just got this message download feeling, Chandra, about your grandfather, that he was due to exit when you became, and I'm putting this in quotation marks, when you became a woman, because that's when you had to pull your sword out and start to sort out your life forever.
And I was a late bloomer. I didn't come into my womanness until I was 12.
But 12, 13, that's technically...
Yeah.
I was 15. So
I really, well, I say that because all of my friends were like 9, 10.
Jesus.
And here I was 12, 13 and still hadn't.
But there's biology and then there's emotionally. I mean, yeah, but exactly. That's what I got. Like he was predestined to exit at that time.
Yeah. That totally makes sense.
And so you've been spending all your life getting that sword.
Sharpening it up, woman.
Dang. Cutting out what needs to be cut out, though, even when things were hard.
But you were talking about the purple light. So when there was one point where Lynn was working on my heart, and Brenda asked me if I was feeling anything in my high heart. And I said no. And I said it very curt and very short. And then I said, for the first time in several days. And what I meant was I have been having, I don't want to call it pain, but sensation like in my heart. And we've even had text messages where you were talking about like the thymus thump and like, and I'm like, I do that intuitively. Like I'll get anxiety and I'll just feel like I need to beat my chest to relieve it. And I've had that feeling for several days. And it was all of a sudden, I didn't have that feeling. So when I said no, it was more of like an absence of, I was noticing an absence of feeling, which isn't nothing. It's just an absence of what has been there up to this point. But then as you kept staying in my heart, I saw at first what I interpreted as the face of a snake. And then I was like, that's not right. And then it was like, bitch, that's a dragon. That's what my head said to me. And I'm like, oh, of course it is.
And then she called in the dragons.
And then she called in the dragons. But it started out green, but then it's the dragon I wrote about in my book. It shifted into purples and greens. And it was almost like peacock colors that as the light moved over it, I could see all these different shimmery. It was beautiful.
That's powerful.
That's interesting because the dragons I work with, one of them is green and one of them's purple. And I don't think I've ever told you all that.
No, you have not.
When they come in, it's really interesting and I guess because I'm like the comedian or whatever, like when they come in, it's like a two-headed dragon and they're kind of derpy. And they're like, and then all of a sudden it's like they hit their power button and they separate and they become these glimmering.
Yeah, it was almost
separate entities.
It was like mermaid scales, kind of shimmery.
Iridescent.
Yes.
They're green. It's like a green shimmery color, and the other one turns into a purple shimmery color.
Girl, it's you.
What?
It's you. Your dragons are an aspect of you.
Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. That's probably
That's
true.
why they're a little bit derpy.
It's
well, and
true.
then when they step in their power, they're like, move over, bitch.
Yeah,
exactly. That is Lynn.
To a T.
Oh,
it's part of you. It is you.
Okay.
You are a dragon.
Receive that.
You're a two-headed dragon.
I will take it. Sometimes two heads are better than one.
Usually
that's what she said.
But to put all of this in context, before any clip of a video is released from someone that was observing / holding space / sending love and light, we had Chandra laying on the couch with her eyes closed. We had Lynn positioned kind of over her torso and Brenda at her feet. And Liz, our super witch, and I were, in the background with the puppies. Exactly, sending love. And it was beautiful and it was profound to watch. And I will say this, Lynn does kind of a shape-shifting thing. Her voice changes. I heard her get choked up. I heard her call in the entities that needed to be there. And it was a wonderful experience, even if you're not the one it's directed to.
Well, and it is specifically for you because I had this intense feeling of, even though when you called in Ra specifically, I had this intense feeling of you reading my mind, even though the thought of Ra hadn't entered my mind. The feeling that I got was you reading my mind.
Your higher self knew.
My higher self knew that's who needed to come in. And I got this feeling of you reading my mind, which was, in the moment, it was very comforting because it was like, it gave me this level of trust. Not that I didn't trust you before, but it was like a new level of trust of like, oh, she know what she's doing. This is specifically for me because it felt like that was going to be my next thought and you had it before I had it.
It's more like they know what they're doing. I'm just like the clown.
That's
the conduit.
Vessel.
Humble of you to say. But
I'm just literally just it's just the vessel. I've just stepped out of the way and,
exactly.
But that what is happening is the right thing for you as the recipient, as the client, or however you want to word it in the moment, is because it almost felt like you were reading my mind, even though I hadn't had the thought yet, if that makes sense.
It does. And I do remember at one point, I think it was it Chilla that shook, that did the dog shake? And
Shake it off.
I thought, oh, they're shaking the energy off. That's like going around in the room.
Chilla's my dog, by the way.
Yes. That is Cam's baby.
But with Ra, I feel like the sun god, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what does the sun do? It shines a light on the murky areas of our life that must be disinfected, or we get stuck in that nasty ass swamp.
And it's also the energy of fire.
Yes. And fire cleanses. It harms, but it cleanses, and it allows for new growth.
It's like the phoenix rising from the ashes. Burns it down. Yeah.
So I have a question for everybody. Before today, and some of you out there listening, I want you to think about this as well. I have, even in my pre-woo days, because, you know, we all go through breakups, got to get rid of that bad man, all that stuff. I have done cord cutting ceremonies that I read about, that a friend told me about, and they involve various things, from tying a string between two candles and saying a prayer, burning them down. One involved kneeling in a bathtub and putting all of your angst and hurt into the water, blessing it and watching it run down the drain and not exiting until every drop is gone. That's what I knew about cord cutting prior to today. And if you're in a hurry, if you need to banish something from your life, absolutely give it a go. But it was a whole new level today, watching a very powerful woman that I'm proud to call my friend work on another powerful woman that I'm proud to call my friend. So,
and
look into it.
Well, and you know, I think it's just like, you know, facial tissues or Kleenex. Like we use these words to describe larger concepts, and we use this word of cord cutting, but it wasn't just cord cutting. Like it was like, yes, she cut that physical, energetic connection, but then there were the timelines that needed to be collapsed, where all of the hurt and the manipulation and everything lived. And then there were the contracts that needed to be closed that were still, you know, quote unquote, operational in the kind of in the background. So there's, it's a quote unquote cord cutting, but there's, until you've had the training, until you've had a mentor to show you like all of, and not that your training's done. I mean, maybe there's more aspects to come.
There's always more training to be
She's still
done.
breathing.
Oh my God.
But I mean,
sign me up.
But I mean, for somebody that knows even more about the aspects involved of doing it, I don't want to say right's not the right word, but you understand what I'm saying, of all of the aspects that need to be taken into consideration when you do something like that. I mean, I'm sure just by sheer intention, the candle with the string and the water, by sheer intention, those have some effect.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
By finding someone that has had themselves educated and knows even more about all of the or some more of the aspects of what needs to go into it, I think is also very important.
Because even whenever you clear that out, the yuck or, you know, whatever needs to be deleted from your life, you also need to fill that space up with something, or else something else will come in to fill it. So having a practitioner,
you don't want to leave it to
the universe,
will of the universe to just fill it up.
Because you might get filled up with the same stuff that you just got rid of. So it is good to work with someone who knows like what the next steps are, not just we're going to cut this cord, it's going to be done. That's going to be it. I mean, there's a lot of layers to it.
Well, you cut it and like fill it up with the sun, like you're calling Ra to illuminate anything else that you need to see.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So that can be cut too. Fill it up with divine love and light. Yeah, so you don't leave anything too empty.
Does anybody have any closing remarks for us?
I just want to say how honored, I'm going to cry.
Oh,
I am to have friends that would do something like that for me.
Every day, girl.
Yeah.
Anytime. You're worth it.
All day, every day.
And you guys know, with what little talent I have, is whatever I need to do, I'll do it for you guys.
Can I have Peanut?
Is that my dog?
That's the dog.
Okay. Except for my child. I can't give it my child.
Pick another obsession, Lynn.
I'll share, but
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Well, I think it was interesting to work on Chandra, don't you, Brenda? I think it was
beautiful.
I think it's beautiful. And I think
it's beautiful to be able to work on friends and help friends, I think.
It is. But, you know, it's also like I remember staring at Brenda. I will say this in closing. Like I remember like looking through Brenda.
Yeah, it was weird.
It was weird because I know Brenda was there, but I don't think I was seeing Brenda.
Yeah.
But what I could see was her in my mind's eye unwrapping.
Mm.
Well, and me laying there with my eyes closed, but feeling the fact that you're looking at her, she don't look like herself,
Yeah.
and she looking at you, and she can't see you,
Right.
and like I could feel all of that like going on at the side.
But it's, yeah, having two people. Why is poor Chandra? She's probably going to be glowing tonight. And she had two of us in there working on her.
Love to hear what kind of dreams she might have
Yeah,
tonight.
it might be really interesting to see what you dream tonight.
Dreams. I'm waiting to see how my husband reacts to my new glow.
That's funny.
Quite an experience.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
It was an interesting experience. Always fun to work with friends.
Yeah.
And thanks for volunteering your soul for us, Chandra.
Yes, and just laying it out
on
there.
display.
Absolutely. We always need a good test subject. Bravo.
Feel like a piece of meat.
I'm an ADHD Gemini. There's no sharing if there's not oversharing.
Right.
So
Exactly.
Full moon in Gemini, the time was right.
the time was ripe.
It really was like the perfect timing.
Mhm.
It was.
Yeah. I hate Melissa couldn't join us today.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it always is as it should be.
It is. It is.
Namaste.
Yeah. All right. We love you guys.
We will
Please
catch you on the next episode.
Yes.
Mm.
Please review us on Spotify or Apple and join our online community. We do online sessions if you do not live in the area, and we're also doing in-person sessions once a month. We'd love to have you join our local community because we really love watching it grow and the connections that we're making with each person.
And we're attracting such wonderful people. It's amazing the
it's
people that
so
are
much
coming
fun.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been really good.
So love you guys and see you on the next episode.
Bye, everybody.
Peace out.
Thank you for joining us today. Please follow and subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review. It's so easy to do and such a huge help for us. We appreciate your interactions so much. Want to join us at our table? Make sure to check out our YouTube channel and join our Facebook community. If you've enjoyed this content and wish to support us, take a look at our Patreon page. All information and links will be in our podcast description. Catch you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM. Women's voices amplified.